Good evening. I'm Kelda Yoon. We're learning more tonight about the pedestrian killed after two cars collided in the city's West End on Monday. The family of the 46-year-old woman who was out for a walk with her partner when she was struck is blaming the tragedy on distracted driving and speed, which residents have long said is a problem in the area. Greg Ross has more.
We've learned tonight that the victim was 46-year-old Julia Cleveland, a well-known Toronto musician. In fact, her family telling us in a statement tonight that she was a jazz musician and composer. She also worked as the finance manager for the Toronto Musicians Association. They tell us that that was her way of giving back to the Toronto music community. Now, several people, friends and family of Cleveland's, have stopped by at this location here at Annette Street and Pacific Avenue to drop off flowers for Cleveland. As you can see behind me here, there's a growing memorial there. Police tell us that Cleveland was hit by a Hyundai Tucson that drove up onto the sidewalk after a collision. We're told that the Tucson was driving westbound here on Annette, and another car, a Hyundai Elantra, was driving northbound on Pacific, and they collided right here in the middle of this intersection. And after being hit, the Tucson mounted the curb, hitting Cleveland and a 50-year-old man who were standing right here on the sidewalk where I am right now. I've been told that that 50-year-old man was Cleveland's partner. A longtime friend of Cleveland stopped by here today to see this memorial. In fact, she told us that Cleveland was a resident of this neighborhood. And according to that friend, Cleveland's partner was also badly injured in that collision. He broke his arm, but despite his injuries, he attempted to help Cleveland, who was laying here on the sidewalk fighting for her life. She was obviously very badly injured, and later pronounced dead here on the scene. Now, that 50-year-old man was taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. We're also told that the driver of the Hyundai Tucson was taken to hospital with minor injuries. And we did hear from Cleveland's father tonight, Gordon Cleveland, who is a professor at the University of Toronto. He told us in an email, Julia was my youngest daughter, a wonderful musician, gardener, and full of love, until she went for a walk and got killed by drivers not paying attention or driving too fast. We spoke to the local MPP here. We also spoke to a number of residents that stopped by here at the scene, and many of them also expressing concerns about the way people drive on these streets in this residential neighborhood.
This is also a 40-kilometer-an-hour zone. I mean, we have elementary schools, 2 of them. We have high school. This is a residential area. And to know that, people who are just taking a walk on our streets can be killed because of, looks like reckless driving.
Looks like it must have been at speed or a heavy vehicle. Just walking here today, I've seen cars going fast. People really do go very fast, and they have bigger and bigger cars. And, we just have our bodies that are totally unprotected, and we're out here, targets, walking on the sidewalk. I just can't even imagine.
At this point, police have not laid any charges in connection to this collision that happened here last night. They say so far it's not clear who was at fault. Toronto Police Traffic Services are investigating, and part of that investigation is to try and find any video from this area. Police are asking anyone who may have dash cam footage and were in this area last night, may have captured something on that dash cam footage, to come forward and provide that to police.
One person is dead after a 2-vehicle crash in Caledon. This is the scene on Highway 9 east of Centerville Creek Road. The crash happening just before 6 this evening. Police say one of the drivers was pronounced dead at the scene, adding that a stretch of the highway will remain closed for the investigation. An 18-year-old woman charged by Peel Police in connection with a brazen daytime theft of a Porsche in Mississauga last week is now facing similar charges from 2 incidents here in Toronto. The police here say she and a male suspect drove away with a stolen BMW and arranged a meeting with another car owner.
One thing that we would like to remind people of is if you are interested in selling your vehicle or something that's worth a lot of money, is to maybe go through an organization or someone else that can sell it on your behalf and not put yourself at risk.
The incident in Mississauga was caught on security video. It showed a woman running over a man with his own SUV before taking off with his vehicle. Peel Police charge her with 4 offenses in connection to the incident. Well, now Toronto Police are laying 3 charges against Sarah Badshaw in connection with 2 incidents in this city. Now, in each case, a man and a woman set up meetings with people selling their vehicles. Police say they're looking for a male suspect with a thin build and a long black beard. The TTC hosting an open house in Scarborough tonight, giving residents an update on the dedicated busway that's expected to replace the Line 3 Scarborough RT, which has been decommissioned for over a year now, leaving commuters to rely on express buses. And as Tyreek Reed tells us, many are eagerly awaiting a more dependable way to get around.
Scarborough transit riders say they're tired of waiting for faster transit options without the RT.
To be honest, it's been very hard. I'm just way more used to the RT than taking a bus.
There's still delays in the trip, right? Before it was a guaranteed 10 minutes between the stations, but now it could be anywhere between 15 to half an hour.
Riders have been left with fewer transit options for more than a year after the Scarborough RT was decommissioned. The line was set to close in November of 2023, but a derailment forced the TTC to shut it down months sooner, forcing them to come up with a new plan.
We're here this evening to provide some updates to members of the community on the busway that is actually going to be coming in the community.
Today, the TTC provided updates for the replacement Line 3 busway to fill the transit gap while the Scarborough subway extension is being built. The open house featured environmental assessment results that warns of increased noise for residents along the corridor and reduced air quality from buses. Local councillors attended the open house to provide more insight into the project.
It will cost about $100 million, maybe give or take. I'm hoping, of course, keeping fingers crossed, that it actually comes in on budget and on time.
The project will see the former RT corridor paved over for buses to operate between Kennedy and Ellesmere. And although advocates welcome the project, they say the work should have been done sooner.
This whole process has been a sort of slow-moving train wreck because 10 years ago we knew that eventually the RT would be decommissioned. We kept putting it off, and now it seems like they have a plan finally, right? Or the beginning of a plan.
Transit riders agree. But for now, they say they're making the most out of the several express options available.
I think right now, with a lack of better options, what they've implemented with the red bus lanes on Kennedy, Ellesmere, Midland, I think that's a wonderful replacement that they've done, making the most of what they've got, really.
The TTC says construction for the project will begin in 2025, with an expected completion date of 2027. The Line 2 Scarborough subway extension is expected to be complete in 2030. Tyreek Reed, CBC News, Toronto.
Free public Wi-Fi in subway stations is still available for now. The TTC board deciding at its meeting today that the service will stay in place until more is known about how scrapping it will affect low-income riders. As Chris Glover explains, the board also voting to look at ways to expand free Wi-Fi to other parts of the transit network.
A motion was passed here at City Hall at the TTC board meeting calling for free public Wi-Fi at subway stops to continue until at least studies have been done into the impact this cancellation would have, particularly on low-income people. Now, earlier this month, the TTC said it was canceling this free public Wi-Fi at subway stations because they were seeing a reduction in people relying on this service. The TTC said some 65% reduction as a result of the expansion of the 5G network to all carriers. Now, the TTC also said that in order to keep this free public Wi-Fi, it would cost $17 million in infrastructure upgrades, but the TTC didn't outline those costs to councillors on the TTC board, and so that's why Councillor Josh Matlow put forward this motion. It would also call for a detailed list of those expenses for the infrastructure upgrades. Here's more from Councillor Josh Matlow.
The TTC has suggested, well, only 2% of riders use it, so what's the point? 2% of riders use it. That's 20,000 logins a day. It's declined 65% over the years because they allowed the service to go to crap. That's why. But it's still 20,000 logins a day, which actually gives evidence that despite the deterioration in service, there are a large number of Torontonians who use the stations every day, who desperately rely on it.
And Matlow was also flanked there by the transit advocacy group TTC Riders, who also argue that low-income people and newcomers to Toronto really rely on that free public Wi-Fi due to the fact that phone plans are just so expensive. The Women Abuse Council of Toronto was also at that press conference today, and they were talking about how this is also a safety issue. According to some research that they did, a survey back in 2022, they found that roughly 60% of female riders in Toronto have experienced sexual harassment while using transit, and they were saying that this is a critical way for all passengers to try to stay connected and to stay safe while riding transit. Here's more from both of those organizations.
There are newcomers, there are tourists. I remember when I was a newcomer in Toronto, and I was so lost in the system. If the Wi-Fi service isn't free, expanded, and improved, people like me will end up becoming fear evaders.
And what's clear to us is that the removal of free Wi-Fi on the public transit is a feminist issue, it's a safety issue, and it's an accessibility issue.
And in addition to TTC staff going back and making a clear accounting of how that $17 million is needed in order to upgrade infrastructure, TTC staff have also been asked to look at how they could expand free public Wi-Fi to other parts of the network. That would include bus stops and possibly street level stops as well. And those answers are expected at the October TTC board meeting. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
The TTC is also making moves on automated ticketing enforcement in what councillors call an effort to protect the riders as they exit streetcars. Councillor Josh Matlow introduced the motion at today's board meeting. He says drivers often fail to stop for pedestrians getting on and off streetcars, which is illegal. The enforcement will use external cameras to catch drivers in the act. It's set to roll out at the start of next year. Welcome back. Toronto is revamping its vacant home tax after a bumpy rollout earlier this year. City staff introducing a slew of changes to try to make the process easier the second time around, but it does come at a cost. City Hall reporter Sean Jeffords takes a look.
The scene at City Hall in April as people lined up in droves to dispute their vacant home tax charges. Over 150,000 people were incorrectly assessed fees under the system, causing outrage. Mayor Olivia Chow was blunt in her assessment of what can't be allowed to happen again.
The staff cannot fail, the city cannot fail, because what the people experienced last year was terrible, it's heartbreaking, it's scary.
The vacant home tax was created in 2021 as a way to address Toronto's growing housing crisis. If your home is empty, you have to pay a 1% fee on its assessed value, which can mean a bill for thousands of dollars. The idea is to create an incentive for people who have a vacant home to either rent it to someone or to sell it. And in a bid to avoid repeating that mistake this year, the city has unveiled an overhauled system. The city's chief financial officer says these changes should make it easier to declare whether your home is vacant or not.
It's imperative that city staff design a program that makes it as easy and as accessible as possible for everyone to make their annual declarations, with a program redesign that addresses the significant challenges experienced this past year.
This year, city staff are planning a communications blitz to make people aware of the tax. They've also made declaring your home occupied or vacant easier online and over the phone. They've created a dedicated team at 311 to help people complete the process, but it will all come with a price tag. In all, the city will spend nearly $6 million to administer the tax this year, up by $2.5 million from last year.
I was just enjoying listening to you guys answer.
Budget Chief Shelley Carroll defended the spending and the need for the tax.
We are going to do everything we can to fix this because we do need to do this to create those homes. And so people will know that they are helping the city of Toronto put a roof over people's head just by doing this one thing every year at the end of the year.
For homeowners, Councillor Brad Bradford says the opt-out nature of the tax needs to change.
And I think until we see changes that reflect the fact that there's a reverse onus for homeowners to notify the city, we're going to still have challenges.
To ask why
This councillor wants to scrap the tax altogether.
this is a tax I haven't supported from day number one, and I still do not support it. But I do feel for residents that have had to jump through hoops to get through this process and be diligent with their paperwork. Otherwise, they face a hefty bill from the city.
The changes must still be approved by City Council at a meeting next month. Sean Jeffords, CBC News, Toronto.
A Toronto police officer was back in a Brampton courtroom today. Calvin Au is facing a charge of assault causing bodily harm in connection to the death of 19-year-old Chad Facey. Ali Chiasson is covering the trial for us.
It was Constable Gurmak Benning who was buying the Apple Watch from 19-year-old Chad Facey. Benning testified that he wanted his Toronto police colleague Calvin Au to accompany him that day. Both officers were off duty at the time. He says he invited Au, quote, because I know he's good with tech stuff. I wanted someone who knew what the products are to make sure it's authentic. Benning says he handed over the $400 to Facey, who left before they opened the box, realizing it was counterfeit. But once they did, Benning says he drove after Facey in the direction they last saw him. He says Calvin went to find Facey on foot. On the witness stand, he describes what he remembers when he caught up with Facey. Quote, I told him, give me my money back. I reached for the money in his hand and I took it. And almost instantaneously, Calvin took him down. He described Facey as thrashing around. That lasts a few seconds before Benning says he and Au retreat to the vehicle to call 911 to report a Kijiji deal gone bad. That call was played in court, and you can hear the dispatcher asking Benning whether anything got violent. Benning says no. He also testified that the person heard in the background saying, go, 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 was his friend Calvin Au, who has pleaded not guilty to assault causing bodily harm. The trial continues tomorrow. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Brampton.
And court was back in session today in the charter challenge against a controversial provincial healthcare law. Bill 7 was designed to cut down on hospital crowding, but some advocates say it treats seniors unfairly and violates their rights. Brittany Billette reports.
The system is broken. It wasn't there for us.
Before proceedings got underway, those against Bill 7 spoke out once again. Some families say Bill 7, also known as the More Beds, Better Care Act, takes away people's right to autonomy and choice and forces them to separate from their loved ones. Nora Challoner's husband was sent to a home 35 kilometers away.
How are they going to stay connected? You're at a period in your life when your support groups are not there.
The law allows hospitals to move some patients who need an alternate level of care into nursing homes. Patients can be sent to a long-term care home far away from their families without their consent.
And they're under threat by the hospital to be charged $400 a day or go to a place they don't want to go to. And they're still receiving care. It's a pretty hard thing for a family to do in those circumstances.
The main focus in the courtroom today was on the province's arguments. Lawyers made the case that Bill 7 was designed to make sure that hospital beds are open for people with severe health care needs. They also said that patients are only moved into a long-term care home if their care team says it's appropriate and if that patient has declined a spot that's available for them. The lawyer representing the Ontario Health Coalition and the Advocacy Centre for the Elderly pushed back on their arguments, saying that the bill infringed on people's right to informed consent. The judge grilled him to provide an example.
The judge is very tough. He's, questioning the family experiences of people in this situation and the experiences of the physician experts and so on. So we'll see what happens. It feels, it's a pretty stressful, emotional roller coaster, I think, for everyone who has been experiencing this.
During today's proceedings, Justice Robert Senta seemed receptive to the province's arguments. His final decision is expected to come down a few months from now. Brittany Billette, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, time now for a look at your extended forecast with Colette Kennedy. And Colette, more rain is coming our way.
Thank you. Yeah, we do have this rainfall warning, which I need to tell you about, and I'll illustrate for you. But what I'm really thinking is that it won't be many areas that are likely to get to these higher rainfall totals. So the areas that are in green here, where we have the warning, that potential to around 50 millimeters of rain, it does include the city of Toronto, and then all these areas surrounding in a special weather statement where it might even be 20, 30 plus millimeters of rainfall. But let me just show you. This is one particular model that I've been sort of leaning towards, and it's giving, yes, some heavier amounts perhaps into eastern Ontario, but still even there not reaching that 50 millimeters, and then lesser amounts as we track back to the west. So be watching the Niagara region back towards Norfolk County perhaps, and eastern parts of the GTA. Again, it's so highly localized. When you get a thunderstorm that comes through, then there could be just little pockets that see those much more enhanced amounts of rainfall here, okay? Highs from today, and really kind of important in terms of these temperatures is just that the high and low, there's not much of a change, a few degrees in general. So here we go as we're moving now towards the midnight hour and pushing through. That's when some of this more intense activity is going through along with this warm front. And then we start to see things really tapering off towards tomorrow morning. The isolated shower or thunderstorm risk is still there as the cold front will be coming through, and you'll see a few things bubbling up, but also likely to be getting into some clearing and getting some sunshine coming through too. So tomorrow afternoon's actually looking in most cases, in many cases, much better, and Thursday a whole lot better with a bunch of sunshine coming our way. So really improving conditions there, where I can take you to the Caribbean, where there's worsening conditions with Tropical Storm Helene. Now this is anticipated not only to become a hurricane, but as we move towards Thursday night and it moves towards the land in the Great Bend of Florida through this area here, by Thursday evening, perhaps a major hurricane. So lots to watch there. They do have hurricane watches in place all the way down towards Fort Myers, as they're anticipating that coming in, not just with storm surge, but tornadoes, wind damage, flash flooding, all these things to watch. Overnight temperatures, again, kind of that range. There may be a few cooler numbers into eastern Ontario, but otherwise it's that 17, 18, 19. I've got 18 for Toronto. 23, though, tomorrow afternoon as we do get into some better conditions with the day wearing on. And boy, liking the look of Thursday. And for now, keeping the weekend looking good, but that may change.